flying over the Peak District in the very heart of England. Beneath us are a series of magnificent dams and reservoirs built to provide a much-needed water supply for Britain's rapidly expanding cities. But in the dash to create these new sources of water, hundreds of lives would be lost and whole communities destroyed forever. In the middle of the Peak District lies the Derwent Valley, home to one of the largest reservoir systems in Britain. Holding back these huge bodies of water are 3 dams at Howden, Derwent and Ladybower. Built in the early 20th century, they took 45 years to complete, the result of a massive engineering challenge first taken up by the Victorians.
Look at this, Mark. This is Derwent Dam we're passing over now. But look at the scale of it. I mean, what audacity for the Victorians to even think they could change the landscape like this. They're fantastic constructions, absolutely enormous.
And of course there were dams like that being built all over Britain at the time to bring fresh water to the new industrial cities.
Yeah, but the amazing thing is, can you see how low the water level has gone to this summer? The beauty of it is, from our point of view, it's beginning to reveal some of the sacrifice that was made in order that these valleys could be flooded. I mean, if you look below, for example, that pile of stones, that's the remains of a farm and a couple of gateposts.
But look, I can see sort of walls and so forth down there. You know, they would never have thought that their houses would be visible again, not 90 years after they moved out.
No, absolutely not.
With the 19th century Industrial Revolution, Britain's cities expanded at a furious rate. As conditions in the cities worsened, water supplies became increasingly inadequate. Disease soon ran riot, with cholera wiping out thousands of people. A clean water supply was desperately needed. The pioneering Victorians rose to the challenge, constructing vast reservoirs which could store millions of gallons of water. With its huge valleys, the Peak District was an ideal place to build such reservoirs. Geologist Hermione Coburn has joined me to explain what drew the Victorians to the area.
Well, there's 3 main things that they would have been looking for, Mark. Firstly, if you want a reservoir, you need a good supply of water.
Self-evidently.
And they get that in the Peak District. I mean, there's a huge amount of rainfall here, so that's number 1. Secondly, you need a good landscape. You need the right shape of valley. And over here you can see the Peak District is full of quite steep-sided, narrow valleys that provide great reservoirs.
So it's not easy to put a dam across.
Yes, put a dam across and you build up a very deep, quite narrow but long reservoir. And thirdly, it boils down to the geology. And the most important geological consideration is that your valley has to be watertight. Because there's no point in building a dam if all the water's going to seep out around the sides and seep through the rocks.
In 19th century Britain, the most common dams built were massive embankments constructed of soil. At the heart of these dams were large watertight cores made from clay, which prevented water from seeping through them into the valleys beneath. One of the earliest projects was the massive dam at Dale Dyke. Designed to carry water to nearby Sheffield, this huge embankment would take 5 years to complete.
What we're flying over here is the Dale Dyke. This was the style that was favoured in the mid-19th century, but they weren't always terribly successful. What we're seeing there is the new dam, but down in the trees is the site of the original Dale Dyke dam.
It was hoped that the Dale Dyke project would fulfil Sheffield's rapidly growing water supply needs. But as construction drew to a close in March 1864, disaster hit the project. As the reservoir filled for the first time, the massive pressure of the water behind it caused the dam to suddenly breach. As a hole several hundred feet long and 50 yards wide tore across the earthwork, a torrent of water came crashing through, flooding the valley for 8 miles. 244 people lost their lives, and the Dale Dyke tragedy became the biggest disaster to have ever hit peacetime Britain. What actually happened on that fateful night?
Well, it was the 11th of March, 1864, and the dam was nearing completion. And there was a workman on his way home, a guy called William Horsfield, and as he walked across the top of the dam, he noticed a small crack running the length of it. He was sufficiently alarmed to call upon the engineer, who was based in Sheffield. It wasn't until 10 o'clock that night that a group of engineers got out to the dam to look at it more closely. It was a very stormy night. They couldn't really get a good look. And suddenly, without really any warning at all, the entire middle section of the dam was blown out by the water gushing downstream.
And that's the bit that we're standing in at the moment?
Yeah, we're standing right in the middle of the breach. It occurred right in the centre of the dam.
An investigation into the disaster concluded that the devastation was a result of unsuitable geology under the dam and a badly designed clay core. With the need for water still a priority, the Victorians wasted no time in rebuilding the Dale Dyke. But when a new reservoir was completed a decade later, it was still not enough to satisfy Sheffield's thirst. Some 40 years later, the tragedy of Dale Dyke was to have a direct impact on the Derwent Valley water scheme.